I've seen some errors lately that is basically saying that Amazon wants to change the product type based on the titles and bullet points of the listing. And so you have that kind of back-end knowledge going, oh, Amazon thinks that my listing belongs in a different browse node. It's like, oh no. And most of the time you don't want that changed.
Yeah.
And Amazon will change it by themselves. But if you get that, you go, okay, well, I know I need to change, put something in my title or put something in my bullet points that shows Amazon, because all these are used bots just scraping stuff. That just shows them, hey, look, it's in the right, browse node.
So you're saying in some situation, errors can be helpful.
Yeah, flat files are like working out at the gym, that good old analogy, where it's like, you got to keep doing them to get better at them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And then when you have that update with no errors or no issues, you're
taking screenshots.
You're just stoked. You're just taking screenshots, sharing on LinkedIn and Twitter and all that good stuff.
So you probably have heard me talk about bulk files, but did you know there's something else that can also help you manage large complex accounts called flat files, and this has to do with listings. But just like bulk files, flat files can seem a little bit daunting, a little bit scary, and a little bit hard to get into if you don't know what you're doing. So today I'm going to be talking with an expert on flat files. He's going to be giving you the lowdown of how you can use them, how to troubleshoot them, all of the above. I'm super excited to get into this one. So Brett Bohannon, welcome.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. Yeah, you were the bulk queen for advertising.
I assume it's similar to you. It was like you learned this thing and then you realized, oh my gosh, this is amazing and nobody else is talking about it, so let me be helpful and talk about it. And that's how I got into it.
That's exactly right, actually. It's funny because Amazon, it used to be like everything was full service back in the day. Rarely you got, individuals that just knew advertising or just knew one sector of it. But now it's kind of broken off into that. And I actually enjoy flat files and enjoy catalog issues, which is super interesting. But it's kind of like detective work.
Yeah.
You just kind of figure out what is going on and you can fix it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you want to get like an overview if someone hasn't run across you? How'd you get into this? How'd you get into flat files?
Yeah. Like the whole backstory of like how I got into Amazon?
We could go there if you want, or we could say...
I'll go real quick. I usually have a little 10-second little deal. I got into Amazon like 2016 selling products, similar to, a handful of service providers out there, and then sold that business 2018, helped develop a large Amazon division at a large agency. Right after that, and then COVID hit, went off on my own and did more consulting and traveled the United States and whatnot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got into the flat file arena just as we were talking about, just in regards to kind of finding out that niche within the Amazon space. I was pretty, I guess, like salty about the whole thing of like it breaking up, but I kind of just took it and I was like, you know what, this area is pretty neat. There's a couple other individuals that do a great job in the area as well, and it's fun to kind of, as I mentioned, it's fun to just figure out problems and solve them. So
yeah, no.
I got into it. Yeah, and then Amazon with Brett is kind of around that. That's just my kind of jingle to what we do. You should probably cut that out. But but essentially Amazon with Brett is my company. Then we have Amazon Cowboy, which is spin-off from Amazon with Brett, which is a community-based, just around flat files, category or catalog work and things like that. I know you partnered with a couple individuals and doing a group, which looks amazing. So I think people need to kind of have that. There, I see so many people just asking questions, and if you can kind of get into these certain kind of communities, you're going to get them a lot faster.
Yeah, no, for sure. To start off, I mean, we've said flat file a lot here, but for someone who isn't familiar, they might have heard the word, they're not really sure what that is. Could you quickly explain, like, what is a flat file?
Yeah. I actually think flat files, the term is actually probably going away, which is kind of funky. But just because Amazon kind of shows it as like an inventory file or inventory loader file, there's all kinds of names. But I think flat file has kind of been that term that sometimes seller support uses, and it's been around for so long, and I think it will stay stuck. But essentially what I like to call a flat file is it's like your backbone of your listings. So it's an Excel document, and essentially I like to think of it as like your code for the back end of your listing. So if any website has a code in their back end, like that's what a flat file is for you. listings.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of how I go about explaining bulk files. I'm like, it's all your entire ad account in sort of a two-dimensional structure inside of a spreadsheet. So think about if you could take your entire ad account and you could throw it into a spreadsheet with all of the identifiers and data points and all the above. So it sounds like that's very similar to what is contained in a flat file.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that 2D dimension. I like that.
Yeah. So when it comes to flat files, I know, again, like, I'm going to keep comparing it to bulk files because that's what I know. That's been my experience. And it sounds like there's some parallels there. I know when I first opened it up, I was like, oh, there's this interesting thing called bulk files. I can do all these cool things. And then you open it up and you're like, crap, there's a whole lot of stuff. I have no idea what in the world is going on. I feel like if I change anything, I'm going to break something. So when it comes to flat files, where do you see most sellers get stuck when they try and start using them?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. I've dabbled in bulk files in the advertising section, and it's gnarly. But you definitely have good resources to help with that. So I want to say thank you for your resources.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the biggest is the errors that come out of it. I would say I'm not perfect either when I'm uploading files. Like, there's a lot of times that I'm just rushing through it and I'll forget stuff, and that just happens. But the errors is the biggest thing. I think people get freaked out, like something broke or something didn't work. I see a lot of people that I work with do flat files and they're like, oh no, this error came about. And I'm like, well, what does it show? And, manage inventory page. And they're like, oh, it actually worked. So a lot of times that change will actually work, but they'll show an error, etc. But what I like to think about the errors is it's a constant feedback loop. So it's basically saying, hey, if you didn't do something right, this is what you need to do it right. Or, hey, like I've seen some errors lately that is basically saying that Amazon wants to change the product type based on the titles and bullet points of the listing. And so you have that kind of back-end knowledge going, oh, Amazon thinks that my listing belongs in a different browse node. It's like, oh no, I need it. And most of the time you don't want that changed.
Yeah.
And Amazon will change it by themselves. But if you get that, you go, okay, well, I know I need to put something in my title or put something in my bullet points that shows Amazon, because all these are just bots just scraping stuff. That just shows them, hey, look, it's in the right, browse node.
Yeah.
You got category, subcategory, and browse node. It's just a whole deal. So I think that's the most scariest part for everyone is just the errors.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. So you're saying in some situation errors can be helpful.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that because you're not going to get that feedback just by doing it in the back end or whatnot, but you're going to get that feedback in uploading your flat file.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just saw this yesterday with a client, so it's pretty important to do.
Cool. I know one of the ways a lot of sellers will use a flat file for when it comes to variations, because variations, I mean, like, goodness, we work with a lot of clothing brands. I can't even imagine the catalog work. Like when it comes to setting up like a new variation, you've got all of the colors and then you also have all of the sizes underneath that. And those are a lot of listings to create. So I know, like you're saying, flat files. I know like with bulk files, launching campaigns, I still think that launching campaigns through bulk files is probably the easiest way to do it at scale. So I'm assuming that's the same with the variations. But when it comes to creating variations, I know that there's certain information points that you have to have. I would assume it's very similar to if you're going to do it in the back end. But what kind of information do you want to have in place before you even get started, kind of trying to go about updating the flat file?
Yeah, there's like, if you already have the child SKUs or two different ASINs that are separate that belong in a family, I call them family variations. It's relatively easy to create variations. There's really three different ways. There's actually a variation wizard in the back end. I don't touch that. I don't like the bulk, the file that it creates when you download it. I've just had way too many errors and bad experiences with it. One of them being that it doesn't come with the fulfillment attribute or the row. So as soon as you do it, it's going to think a partial update and it's just going to automatically go to FBM. You can add that row into it, but just if you're thinking about creating a variation, probably stay away from the variation wizard. It's just a little too clunky in my opinion. And there's another way is you can download the proper flat file for that particular category and you can input the information into it. Now, one of my favorite ways is that if you already have these ASINs that you need to put together is your category listing report. And so that is just in inventory reports and then category listing from the drop down. So if that's not there, you have to request it. Back in the day, you always had to request it. And then all of a sudden they made it available to everyone. And nowadays it's available to some and you have to request it to others. And it's super simple. Just go into your help and basically say, I want to request the category listing report. So I guess from that different perspective, there's two different ways. If you're just going to download the proper category file, you want to make sure that you have, title, SKU, ASIN, UPC, and the variation fields is like a minimum. And again, what I always like to do is make sure the fulfillment column says Amazon NA, because if it doesn't, most likely it's going to get switched over to FBM, and then all of a sudden your listing's there and you have stranded inventory. Super easy fix if that does happen, but that's one thing to do. You want to have the variation section of that file is going to be the most important, obviously. So there's going to be a parent only column, and then basically in the parent only column, you're going to create a parent SKU. So the parent SKU can, let's just say your SKU for your other products are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4.8. Let's just take that as an example. The parent SKU could be like 1, 2, 3, 4 dash parent. It can be whatever you want it to be, but a parent SKU, you have to have it. And then you also you want to have a parent title. So for instance, if it's, let's just say it's a size thing, you just cut out the size at the end of the title or wherever you have the size in it and just put the same title in. There are some categories that the parent title will take over all the other children titles, so to say. So for instance, on every single child item, you'll only get the parent title. I know beauty is one of them. I think clothing might be one as well, because what they do is they look at the variation attribute, and that's how they can kind of differentiate between different ASINs. And so you want the title, and then on the parent line, all you need is the parentage and the variation theme. So on the parentage, you want to put parent, variation theme, whatever the variation theme might be, whether it's size, color, etc. And variation themes change based on different categories. And then within the child one, you're going to have parentage SKU, variation theme, and relationship. Now, big thing here is that on the update or delete column, never put delete unless you want your listings to go bye-bye. But you want to do a partial update for your children SKUs or children ASINs, and then you want to do a full update for your parent SKU because you are actually creating that parent SKU. You don't need to put a UPC or anything. It'll just get automatically assigned an ASIN, so you can leave the product ID blank. And that's pretty much the basics of it. Kind of a lot, details, but once you kind of get in there and run through it, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, you do make it sound easy. So I appreciate somebody who knows what they're doing and can make things sound a little easier for us. For someone like just creating this, so you're saying the listing copy should be done before you would go in and do all this stuff. Does it make ever any sense to launch it before and then go back and update it, or you're like, it probably just do it once? Yeah,
if you want to create like a whole listing and just create the variation all together, you might as well just do it all at once. If you have everything. A lot of times when I work with clients, they don't have everything. So you're like, let's just get something up. One of my favorite strategies is, if clients are kind of lagging on content or whatnot, you can get a listing up. I call it the skeleton listing or like a scaffolding listing where it doesn't have everything, but you get the basics up, and then you can send product in, and then you can go back and add all that listings, because you have a 2-week period of time between, let's just say 2 weeks. It's never really 2 weeks. And it depends on the fulfillment on that client side too. If they can get something out in 3 days, great. And then going into Q4, it's just going to be longer, receiving time on Amazon side. But I always like to do that because then it just gives a better runway. Instead of just being like, oh, let's wait, and then let's wait another 2 weeks for product to get there, So it depends on what situation you're in. But if you have everything, you can do a full update on everything. Like if they're all just brand new ASINs, you can create basically a template of this, and just the same way I did, and put all the information in there that you need to. And just basically in the update delete column, you just put update, and then you're set to go.
Awesome. Are there any columns, because I know that kind of weirds people out, like sometimes when they're first getting into things, they're like, oh, I feel like I should have to put, fill out every single thing. Are there columns that you would recommend leaving blank? I think you touched on some of them, or that you see sellers leaving blank that maybe they shouldn't be? Yeah,
it depends on your category. So a lot of them, the flat file that you're going to download, some of the attributes just don't make sense for your product. But any attribute that does make sense for your product, include it. I'm a big fan of this. I talk about this on LinkedIn a lot. Amazon's always changing how their front end looks. I mean, now I believe bullet points, you have to hit a carrot to actually get them about this item kind of deal. So a lot of the times you'll have this kind of list. Again, this is category specific and it can differentiate in different categories, but they'll have this list of different things. Like in the grocery, they have a box, I think that's say like paleo or organic, and that's something that you can put in the back end to showcase on the front end. So whatever might be applicable, I can't even say that word, applicable to your product, input it in, no matter what. Don't leave it blank. That's kind of why, and sometimes the flat files are going to have, attributes that you might not see in the back end as well.
So it's essentially a way for you to give Amazon all the context on your product.
Yeah.
Now
Exactly.
That makes total sense. Cool. So I know you touched on troubleshooting and errors in the beginning and how that, really trips some people up. So do you have any tips when it comes to troubleshooting errors?
My biggest one is just be patient. When you're looking through the errors, you can always find what the error means, but a lot of times it's kind of Amazon speak. So you're kind of just scratching your head going, what the heck? You can research quite a bit within Amazon, the Seller Central. If you just go to the search bar and plug in what they're saying or go to a URL that they say look at, it just takes a little bit of time. I actually created an error report as well. That I have, and that's available in I call it the Amazon Brett Hub, where you can kind of look at the error reports and whatnot and a little bit, and based off of like if it's error report 400 and whatever in the 400s you can check out. So it's a pretty good resource. But overall, it's just being patient and just looking at it and going, okay, how do I fix this? And again, I still scratch my head at a lot of things Amazon asked as well, but kind of have to. I like to walk away from the computer a couple times and then go back to fresh.
So patience is key here then.
Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. So I know with us in bulk files, you end up creating a whole lot of files. Like maybe you have the first one you uploaded and then you got, okay, I troubleshooted with an error and then that one didn't go through and retrouble. So you end up with like all of these files, and which it can be great for storage. Like that's one thing we love bulk files for, is you're keeping a record of things, but it also can make a lot of different files. Do you have any tips for like organization or keeping track of things?
Yeah. Naming is huge. So whatever naming convention you would like, add to it. I also think like putting some kind of note on it as well. So especially when you're uploading it as well. So if you're working maybe with a client who also has, someone internally that does some stuff on Amazon and they're also uploading stuff. I've seen this happen, and you just were like, where did that come from? Who did it? So you'd be able to kind of identify, the breadcrumbs of what's occurring. That, and also whenever I get the submission report back, you have to download it. A lot of people, for sake of ease and quickness, I guess, will use that submission report, make the changes on it, and then submit it back to Amazon. But what that does is that creates a whole nother trouble for all these files everywhere. So what I like to do in that submission report, if there's errors, find out what the errors are and fix it on the one that I upload on the original. That makes it a little bit more organized.
No, that makes total sense. Quick random question here. Have you noticed that you're able to put something in a column if there's no header on it? Will it take that?
Are you referring to like people inputting new columns? Like if there's only 5 bullet points, you can input like 5 more, make 10 or 7. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I was just curious. So one thing that we've done that actually has been helpful with the bulk files, I don't know if it's able to do it in flat files, but we noticed if there was no column header, it would not read that column. So what we can do is when we upload, say, bid adjustments, we'll have the new bids, and then as long as we don't have a header, we can keep a record of the old bids on the sheet.
I'm going to try that out.
There you go.
I'm going to try that out. But the biggest thing on that for flat files is the partial update. So if the category listing report will download whatever you have for that particular SKU within your catalog. It's not Amazon's catalog. So if you have, for instance, if you sold, I don't know, this mason jar and someone else put all the attributes in the back and you just sold it and put it up there, you're going to download your category listing report and there's nothing going to be in the back end of that listing because it's in your catalog. So to get to the point is that if you have everything that and if you use the category listing report, a partial update won't change anything. But if you're not using the category listing report, you're kind of just inputting stuff, whatever you don't input, as long as you have a partial update on it, will stay the same. But whatever you input will override the other existing.
So you can update like some of something depending on what you leave out.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So if you're like, oh, I just want to change the bullets on this, then you could go through and just change bullets.
Yeah. And a lot of times what I like to do is have like a master template. So downloading the category listing report, having that master template, knowing exactly the date that was downloaded, and basically you can change it based off of that. You can go even further, so kind of going even deeper, but you can go even further and have, like, because it's going to download everything in your catalog. So if you have, let's just say you have a book and a printer, I don't know, I'm just looking at a book and a printer right now, but let's just say you have that and you want to have like the book file, you can delete all those other rows and just have all the book information. So that could be like your book template. template, and then same with the printer, vice versa. Delete all the book stuff and just have your printer in there. That way you can kind of work off all the changes for that particular item.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, we use something similar. It's like a lot of times it's easier just to work on the specific section, because then you didn't actually like drag down update a little bit too far or do something. So it sounds like you can also work on partial subsections of the account. You don't have to do everything.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back into the naming, where you're just like, maybe you name it and you're just like partial update to bullet points and date, so you kind of know exactly when it occurred. And then you can also go into your submission records and kind of look and see what occurred as well. Cool. That can get pretty expensive after a little while.
No, that makes a lot of sense. This has been a lot of information. Hopefully takes away a lot of the worry about flat files. I know for me, when I got into bulk files, I think one of the first tests I did was just like, all right, let's just change like one thing. So you're saying like, all right, maybe just go in, try a partial update, try like, all right, I want to update the bullet points on this one listing. Well, let me try doing it with a flat file this time, get my toes wet. So it sounds like that's still an option when it comes to flat files.
Yeah, 100%. Flat files are like working out at the gym, that good old analogy, where it's like you gotta keep doing them to get better at them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And then when you have that, update with no errors or no issues, you're
taking screenshots.
You're just stoked. You're just taking screenshots, sharing on LinkedIn and Twitter and all that good stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know we covered a lot today, but if a seller, I mean, like you're saying, variations is a great place to start, because that's a heck of a ton of work. So if someone was listening to this and like, all right, this sounds super interesting, I would love to get into it, I want to create some variations, what would the first steps you recommend they take?
The first step that I would recommend is they go to my website and download the free variation checklist.
There you go.
It's a great, and that website's amzwithbrett.com or amazonwithbrett.com. It's completely free. I just actually included a video that I did in our community, our Amazon Cowboy community. It's a 20-minute video just going through the step-by-step things of what to do to create a variation. Yeah, it's an extremely great resource. I've gotten some great feedback on it, and yeah, wonderful.
Well, definitely that's one step with everything included. So we'll definitely make sure to link that in the comments below. So definitely go check that out. If you're trying to get into flat files, if you're trying to figure it out, definitely make sure you follow Brett on LinkedIn. He puts out a lot of really great content. So yeah, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with everyone.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate it.